Welcome to the deep dive. It is so great to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
For this one, we are zeroing in on a single, just incredibly rich source document. It's a comprehensive historical text breaking down one of the most ferocious and really legendary engagements of World War One.
Battle of Belleau Wood.
Exactly, the Battle of Belleau Wood. Now, our mission today isn't just to, read off a timeline of dates and troop movements. You can get a dry timeline from any encyclopedia.
Right.
What we want to do is extract the real aha moments from this text. We're looking at exactly how legends are born under fire and how just a few weeks in a shattered French hunting preserve completely forged the identity of a modern military force.
It really is a masterclass in how a group's identity, in this case the modern U.S. Marine Corps, is forged. Not just through victory, but through shared sacrifice, sheer tenacity, and the power of the stories they tell about themselves. But to truly grasp the scale of what happened in those woods, we have to understand the profound desperation of the moment. We're talking about a pivotal flashpoint where the entire trajectory of the First World War just hung by a thread.
Okay, let's unpack this. The year is 1918. It's March, and the situation for the Allies is looking incredibly grim. On the Eastern Front, the Russian Empire has collapsed. They've surrendered.
Which changes everything.
It changes everything, because what that means practically on the ground is that the German army suddenly has nearly 50 additional divisions freed up. 50 divisions.
Aren't just staggering, no?
It's a massive influx of manpower, suddenly shifting focus entirely away from the east and barreling straight toward the Western Front.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the German High Command knows they're operating on a very strict ticking clock here.
Right, because of the Americans.
Exactly. The United States has officially entered the war, but American forces aren't fully deployed on the continent yet. So the Germans are essentially racing to launch a series of overwhelming spring offensives.
To finish it before the U.S. arrives in force.
Yes. The goal is to absolutely crush the British and French forces before the full weight of the American industrial and military machine can get there.
Yeah.
And they are terrifyingly close to succeeding.
How close?
By late May of 1918, German forces have reached the north bank of the Marne River. They are just 59 miles away from Paris.
Wow. Just 59 miles. Just pause and imagine you were sitting in Paris at that moment. You know the German army, bolstered by hundreds of thousands of men from the Eastern Front, is less than 60 miles away.
It's right on their doorstep.
If Paris falls, the war could very well be lost right then and there. It is absolute do or die. And that takes us to the frantic early days of June. German forces have just punched a massive hole in the French lines right to the left of where the American Marines are positioned.
The situation is so dire that the U.S. Reserve, which includes the 23rd Infantry Regiment and the 5th Marines, they're thrown into the breach. They are forced to conduct a grueling 10-kilometer forced march.
And a forced march isn't just a brisk hike. We are talking about carrying heavy gear, rifles, ammunition.
Moving over choked, muddy roads.
Yeah, with little to no sleep. They are racing against time to literally plug this gap in the line by dawn. Just picture that deep, bone-rattling exhaustion before the fighting even really begins.
And they arrive to find a completely collapsing front. The momentum of the German advance was terrifying. It was so overwhelming that the retreating French command actually ordered the arriving Americans to fall back with them.
To retreat.
Right, to dig trenches further to the rear and prepare for a deeper defense.
But the commander of the Marine Brigade, Army General James Harbord, he absolutely refuses. He countermands that French order with a directive that is just incredibly bold. He tells the Marines to hold where they stand.
Hold where they stand.
And the source notes, they don't even have proper entrenching tools. So they are literally digging shallow fighting positions into the earth using their bayonets.
Just trying to scrape out enough cover to shoot from a prone position in these grain fields.
Using knives to dig trenches.
That detail about the bayonets is crucial.
Yeah.
It highlights the sheer lack of preparation time. They are scraping the dirt while the enemy is marching toward them. And then, on the afternoon of June 3rd, the German infantry attacks.
And here they come.
They come advancing through those grain fields with their bayonets fixed, fully expecting to roll right over these hastily prepared, exhausted American positions.
But wait, if these Americans are sleep-deprived from a forced march and lying in shallow ditches they just dug with knives, how do they not just immediately open fire the second they see the enemy?
Right, it goes against every human instinct.
Yeah. It goes against every survival instinct to push a threat away as quickly as possible.
That is exactly the aha moment here. The tactical discipline of these Marines completely changed the equation. Despite the exhaustion, they relied on their intense marksmanship training. They didn't open fire at maximum range.
They waited.
They waited. They let the advancing German waves get within 100 yards.
100 yards is nothing. You can see their faces at that distance.
Exactly. They waited until the enemy was dangerously close before unleashing a coordinated, deadly rifle fire. The source material notes that this specific lethal accuracy completely shocked the German forces.
Because they weren't expecting it.
The Germans simply weren't used to that level of disciplined marksmanship at that range from a supposedly green, untested army. It mowed down the advancing waves and forced the survivors to break their advance and retreat right into the cover of Belleau Wood.
Which perfectly sets the stage for one of the most legendary quotes in military history. As this defensive stand is happening, a French officer supposedly suggests again that the Americans should pull back to save themselves.
Right.
And Marine Captain Lloyd W. Williams of the 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, delivers this immortal retort. He says, "Retreat hell, we just got here."
That's incredible.
Now, the source does note that his battalion commander, Major Frederick Wise, also later claimed he was the one who said it.
Well, it's one of those historical moments where the exact attribution almost matters less than the attitude it represents. That bravado, that sheer, stubborn refusal to yield ground when every piece of conventional wisdom told them to run,
Yeah.
that became absolutely foundational to the identity of the U.S. Marine Corps. They were drawing a line in the dirt.
But holding the line was only the beginning. Defending is one thing. Now they had to go on the offensive to push the Germans back.
Right.
This brings us to dawn on June 6th and the plan to attack Hill 142. The Allies are launching an attack to preempt a German strike. The Marines are ordered to take this hill to prevent flanking fire.
Which is essentially enemy fire hitting the side of a formation rather than the front.
Exactly, to protect the neighboring French 167th Division. But there is a massive fatal mistake made right at the start. The Marines failed to scout the woods before advancing.
The cost of that intelligence failure was devastating.
But why wouldn't they scout? How does a modern military force just advance blindly into a massive forest without knowing what's in there?
It comes down to a mix of extreme urgency and a breakdown in battlefield intelligence. They were rushing to preempt a German attack, so time was of the essence.
So they just rushed in.
But because they didn't scout, they completely missed the fact that there was an entire regiment of German infantry heavily dug in. We are talking about a sophisticated network of interlocked machine gun nests.
Interlocked meaning?
Meaning the fields of fire overlap. If you manage to dodge the bullets from one machine gun, you are immediately stepping into the stream of bullets from another.
No safe zones.
None. There are no safe zones, no blind spots. They were also supported by artillery. When you advance blindly into an entrenched position like that, the outcome is inevitably tragic.
Tragic doesn't even begin to cover it. You have the 1st Battalion, 5th Marines advancing in waves, with fixed bayonets straight across an open, waist-high wheat field.
Waist-high wheat.
Yeah, and waist-high wheat sounds picturesque until you realize it obscures the uneven ground, trips you up, but offers absolutely zero ballistic protection against bullets. They are completely exposed. Captain Crowther, commanding the 67th Company, is killed almost instantly.
Yes, brutal.
On the other side, Captain Hamilton and the 49th Company are fighting tree to tree. Hamilton loses every single one of his 5 junior officers in this charge. Yet somehow, his men not only take their objective, they overrun it by exactly 6 yards.
And it's in the midst of this absolute chaos that we see staggering individual heroism. During a fierce German counterattack, you have Gunnery Sergeant Ernest A. Jansen, who was serving under the name Charles Hoffman at the time.
What did he do?
The source details how he single-handedly repelled an advance of 12 German soldiers who were carrying light machine guns.
12 against 1.
He charged them, killed 2 with his bayonet, and the rest actually dropped their weapons and fled. For that sheer force of will, he became the first Marine to earn the Medal of Honor in World War I.
That heroism brings us to a darker pivot point later that same afternoon. Here's where it gets really interesting. Because at 5:00 p.m. on that same day, June 6th, the next phase of the offensive begins.
Right, the 17.0 assault.
This time, it's the 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, and the 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines advancing directly into Belleau Wood from the west. Once again, they have to cross a waist-high wheat field right into the teeth of German machine guns.
Right back into it.
And during the initial step-off for this assault, First Sergeant Dan Daly, who already had 2 Medals of Honor from previous conflicts, looks at his men in the 73rd Machine Gun Company and yells out this famous battle cry.
The legendary quote.
He yells, "Come on, you sons of bitches, do you want to live forever?"
It's a quote that echoes through history. But we have to ground that bravado in the sobering reality of what actually happened in that wheat field. Those first waves of Marines, advancing in well-disciplined lines just as they were trained, were systematically slaughtered. Major Berry was severely wounded. The men swept into the southern end of the woods and immediately hit a wall of heavy machine gun fire, sharpshooters hidden in the trees, thick barbed wire, and brutal hand-to-hand combat.
It was a meat grinder.
It was. The casualties sustained on June 6th alone were the highest in Marine Corps history up to that point. 31 officers and 1,056 men in a single day.
Over 1,000 men lost while charging across an open field. It feels like a complete failure of tactics.
It's one of those wild contradictions of military history. You look at the tactical map and think this is a complete disaster. You don't charge machine guns across an open field.
Right.
But strategically, despite the catastrophic loss of life, the Marines had finally gained a foothold inside Belleau Wood. They absorbed a terrifying amount of punishment, but they breached the fortress.
And that breached fortress turns into an absolute nightmare over the next week. From June 7th to the 15th, the battle descends into a brutal, grinding deadlock. The text points out that Belleau Wood had once been this attractive, serene French hunting preserve, but an enormous Allied artillery barrage completely devastated it. The source describes it turning into a jungle of shattered trees, soaked in massive quantities of mustard gas used by the Germans.
The environmental degradation alone is terrifying to visualize. Mustard gas isn't just a cloud that blows away. It settles into the shell craters, it coats the splintered timber, it lingers in the soil, and burns the skin of anyone who touches it.
So you can't even take cover properly.
You are no longer just fighting the enemy, you are fighting the very terrain. Platoon communication completely breaks down in this maze of fallen trees. Men are isolated in small pockets, reduced to fighting with bayonets, trench knives, and bare fists.
Which leads to this wildly chaotic detail from June 11th. Major Wise's 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, are ordered to attack through a thick morning mist. Because visibility is so poor, and the terrain is so destroyed that there are no landmarks left, they actually advance in the completely wrong direction.
They get completely lost in the fog of war.
Exactly. Instead of moving northeast, they move directly across the narrow waste of the woods.
Walking right into the unknown.
But here is the crazy part. They wander into the wrong area, but they accidentally smash right through the German southern defensive lines anyway. How does a mistake like that actually work in their favor?
What's fascinating here is the psychological effect that kind of raw, unpredictable aggression had on the German defenders.
It surprised them.
The German military doctrine of 1918 was highly choreographed. They expected the Americans to fight by the established rules of engagement. When these Marines emerged from the mist in the wrong place, fighting like cornered animals, it broke the German mental models.
They just didn't know how to react.
It completely compensated for the tactical chaos. The source includes a profound quote from a German private whose company had been reduced from 120 yen down to just 30. He wrote back home, "We have Americans opposite us who are terribly reckless fellows."
Terribly reckless fellows. They simply didn't understand the style of fighting because it defied their tactical logic. It was pure aggression overriding strategy.
Yeah.
But as we talk about this Marine aggression, we also have to highlight the unsung heroes who made this relentless push possible. Because the Marines absolutely didn't do this alone.
Far from it.
The source specifically praises the U.S. Army's 2nd Engineers. These guys were doing the impossible. As one Marine captain put it, boy, they dig trenches and mend roads all night and they fight all day.
Imagine the physical toll of that. Digging through root-choked, rocky soil in the dark, constantly under the threat of artillery, and then picking up a rifle when the sun comes up.
No rest at all.
And when the Marines were finally just ground down to the point of total combat exhaustion, it was the Army's 7th and 23rd Infantry Regiments who stepped into the line to relieve them.
It was a massive combined arms effort. The Army battalions took incredibly heavy casualties themselves. The 7th Infantry was described by a returning Marine private as being almost wiped out, but they held the pressure.
They did.
The source notes they attacked those woods a total of 6 times against parts of 5 different German divisions. They kept chewing up those defenses so the line wouldn't collapse.
And all that grinding, all that blood in the wheat fields and the shattered timber finally culminates on June 26th.
The end of the battle.
Major Maurice E. Shearer, leading the 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, finishes clearing the very last of the German defenders from the northern edge of the forest. And he submits a report back to headquarters that is just devastatingly simple. 7 words.
7 words.
Woods, now U.S. Marine Corps entirely.
A 7-word report to cap off one of the bloodiest and most ferocious battles U.S. forces would fight in the entire war. But when you look at the human toll, those 7 words carry an unimaginable weight.
They really do.
For the United States, nearly 10,000 casualties, including 8,811 men killed.
And the German casualties are estimated to be over 10,000.
The commander of the American Expeditionary Forces, General John J. Pershing, stated that for the U.S., it was the biggest battle since Appomattox.
And just to contextualize that for a moment, referencing Appomattox means the United States military hadn't seen concentrated bloodshed on this scale since the final grueling days of the American Civil War, over 50 years prior.
It had been a long time.
It was a baptism by fire for a new generation.
It fundamentally shifted how the world viewed the American military. Which brings us to the lore, the legacy of Belleau Wood. If you know anything about the Marine Corps today, you've probably heard the nickname Devil Dogs.
Yes.
Legend has it that the Germans were so terrified of the Marines charging through that wheat field that they called them Teufelshunde, or Devil Dogs.
The source actually provides some really great historical nuance here. It points out that Teufelshunde likely wasn't common contemporary German slang. The closer term in German would have been Haltung, meaning hellhound.
Hellhound.
There's evidence to suggest the Devil Dog moniker might have been amplified by a clever American propaganda poster created by an artist named Charles B. Falls.
So it might have been partly marketing?
However, even if the exact vocabulary was a bit of stateside myth-making, the underlying truth of that profound enemy respect was very real.
The respect was earned in blood, not just on posters.
It's exactly. An official German report evaluated during the battle classified the Marines as vigorous, self-confident, and remarkable marksmen.
They felt the impact.
Years later, a lieutenant colonel from the historical section of the German army wrote specifically about the Marines' fiery advance and great tenacity. They recognized they had faced something entirely different in those woods.
And you see the echoes of that hard-earned respect everywhere today. The French were so moved by the Marines' tenacity that they officially renamed the forest Bois de la Brigade de Marine.
A huge honor.
If you travel to Europe today, you can see the 1955 Felix de Weldon monument in the clearing of those woods. It's a massive black marble monolith with a bronze relief of a fighting Marine, and it is the only memorial in all of Europe dedicated solely to the United States Marines.
The cultural footprint is massive. It extends far beyond official military channels.
It really does. Even modern pop culture remembers. In 2019, the Swedish heavy metal band Sabaton released a song literally called Devil Dogs, commemorating the battle and using those famous quotes from Pershing and Dan Daly.
When a Swedish metal band a century later is singing about a battle in a French forest, you know the mythos has taken on a life of its own.
So what does this all mean? When we step back and look at all these sources, the staggering casualty lists, the failure to scout, the wrong turns in the mist, the legendary battle cries, what is the ultimate takeaway from the wheat fields of Belleau Wood?
It shows us that military legacy isn't always built on perfect tactics. Tactically, Belleau Wood was often chaotic and deeply flawed. But the modern U.S. Marine Corps wasn't built on flawless doctrine.
No.
It was built on the willingness to endure shared sacrifice, a sheer terrifying tenacity, and an unbreakable psychological will. It is the story of ordinary people placed in an impossible shattered landscape who chose to move forward when every human instinct and every piece of military logic told them to retreat.
Retreat hell, we just got here. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Walking through the harrowing, awe-inspiring history of Belleau Wood has been an incredible journey.
It truly has. And before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
We've spent this entire time talking about the legendary quotes from the Americans, but the source notes 1,600 German soldiers were taken prisoner during this battle.
1,600 prisoners.
Imagine being one of those prisoners, watching these reckless fellows charge through a wheat field straight into your machine gun fire. How might the personal, untold stories of those 1,600 captives fundamentally change our understanding of what really happened in those woods?
That is a fascinating perspective to think about. What did they see? Keep questioning, keep exploring, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.